They tied the Apache twins for stealing bread. One quiet rancher changed their fate. The early morning sun barely peeked over the horizon, casting a soft golden light across the small frontier town. Dust rose gently from the dirt streets as a few townspeople began their day, sweeping porches and tending to small chores. In the shadows of the bakery, two children huddled together, shivering not just from the cold but from hunger that gnawed at their stomachs. They were twins, a boy and a girl, no older than 10, their clothes ragged and patched from many months of wear. Their dark eyes scanned the quiet street nervously, and their small hands clutched each other tightly. The twins had lived near the edge of the town for as long as they could remember, always careful to avoid the townspeople's eyes. Their parents had passed when they were very young, leaving them to survive on scraps, wild berries, and whatever they could scavenge. Some days there was barely enough water to drink, and some nights the cold seemed to bite deeper than the hunger ever could. Today, like many days before, they faced an empty cupboard and gnawing stomachs that refused to wait. The bakery stood quiet, the smell of freshly baked bread drifting faintly into the air. Warm, soft, and inviting, it made the twins' stomachs ache even more. The boy glanced at his sister, fear and determination dancing in his eyes. "We have to," he whispered. "We can't go back without anything. Mama, I mean, we have to eat." The girl nodded, though her hands trembled. She had always been the more cautious of the two, the one who noticed danger first. But hunger was a fierce teacher, and it had made them bold in ways they would not have imagined otherwise. They waited until the town seemed even quieter, until the early morning light cast long shadows that hid their small forms. Then, carefully, they crept toward the bakery. The door, slightly ajar from the baker's early morning preparations, was their only chance. The boy pushed it open just enough to slip inside, followed closely by his sister. Inside, the bakery smelled of warm dough and sweetness, a sharp contrast to the dusty streets outside. Loaves of bread sat neatly on wooden shelves, steam rising faintly from the fresh ones. The twins' eyes widened at the sight, but there was no time to admire. They grabbed a few small loaves, enough to fill their little arms, and tucked them close, hoping the baker would not notice their intrusion. But luck is often fleeting. Just as they turned to leave, a voice rang out sharply. "Hey! What do you think you're doing?" The twins froze, hearts pounding. The baker stood in the doorway, his face red with anger. He was a big man, rough hands gripping a broom like it might strike them if they tried to run. The twins knew there was no escape. They were caught. Before they could even speak, townspeople began gathering, curious and loud. Someone shouted, "Thieves!" "Caught them red-handed," another added. "Tie them up! Make an example!" The crowd's murmurs grew louder, the twins shrinking under the weight of judgment and fear. Their small bodies trembled, and tears threatened to spill. The girl looked at her brother, whispering, "We didn't mean to, we were hungry." But no one seemed to hear. In the harsh frontier town, stealing, even out of hunger, was met with swift punishment. The sheriff arrived, a tall man with a stern face and a badge that gleamed in the morning sun. He nodded to the baker, then looked at the twins with eyes that showed no mercy. "Tie them to the post," he ordered. A few townspeople stepped forward, rough hands binding the children's wrists and ankles to the wooden post in the town square. The twins struggled, but their small strength was no match for the ropes. They could only sit there, their stomachs empty and hearts heavy, as townspeople whispered, pointed, and shook their heads. Some children in the crowd stared with curiosity, others with pity. The twins wished desperately that they could disappear, that the ropes would loosen, that someone, anyone, would help them. The rancher had lived on the outskirts of town for years, keeping mostly to himself. He was a man of few words, with a weathered face that told stories of hardship and long days under the sun. Most townspeople did not pay him much attention, and he preferred it that way. But today his eyes softened as he saw the twins, small and trembling, tied up for something that had been born of hunger, not malice. He remembered his own childhood in a different town, a time when hunger had been his constant companion and kindness had been rare. He remembered standing outside a shop, longing for something to eat, and the fear that someone might notice. He remembered feeling small and powerless, wishing someone would understand, someone would help. And now seeing the twins, those memories stirred within him. The crowd grew restless. "Shouldn't we teach them a lesson?" someone shouted. Another added, "They need to learn stealing has consequences." The twins hung their heads, ashamed, the ropes cutting lightly into their wrists. The boy's eyes scanned the crowd, pleading silently for mercy. The girl whispered again, "Please, please, someone help us." The rancher stepped forward slowly, his presence quiet but commanding. He approached the sheriff, who looked down at him with mild surprise. "Sheriff," the rancher said in a calm, steady voice, "what exactly is happening here?" "They stole bread," the sheriff replied curtly. "They will be punished." He saw the fear, the hunger, the innocence still shining beneath the rough edges of survival. He knew that punishment might satisfy the town, but it would not teach them what they needed to learn about life or compassion. "How old are they?" he asked gently. 10, the sheriff said, a hint of impatience in his voice. "Both of them." The rancher nodded, thinking carefully. "They're children," he said. "Children who are hungry. Punishing them here will not fix anything. I will take responsibility for them. I'll make sure the bread is paid for. Just untie them!" Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some townspeople scowled. Others whispered among themselves. Taking responsibility for thieves was unusual, even daring. The sheriff frowned, clearly reluctant, but the rancher's calm manner made it hard to refuse. "Fine," he said finally. "But if they misbehave, they come back." The rancher approached the twins slowly, kneeling so he was at their level. "You're safe now," he said softly. "I'm taking care of you." The girl's eyes widened, hope flickering for the first time in days. The boy blinked rapidly, unsure if he dared believe. The rancher's hands, gentle but firm, untied the ropes. As the bindings fell away, the twins rubbed their wrists and looked up at him, shy and grateful. The crowd began to disperse, some shaking their heads, others murmuring in admiration or disbelief. The twins stayed close to the rancher, not quite trusting yet, but sensing that, for the first time in a long while, someone had chosen kindness over judgment. The rancher led them toward the outskirts of town, past the dusty streets and curious onlookers. He spoke softly, telling them not to be afraid, that he would make sure they had food, water, and a safe place to rest. The twins clutched his hands, feeling the roughness of his skin and the warmth of his quiet reassurance. As they walked, the boy whispered, "Are you really going to help us?" "Yes," the rancher replied simply. "You'll see. We'll figure this out together." The sun rose higher, casting long shadows over the town and lighting the path ahead. For the twins, each step felt like a step out of fear and into hope. The bakery, the ropes, and the harsh stairs faded behind them, replaced by the promise of food, safety, and the guidance of a man who understood that sometimes children need a chance more than punishment. The ranch lay a short walk from the town, nestled among rolling hills and open fields. Small streams ran through the property, glinting in the morning sun, and a few animals wandered freely, calling softly to one another. To the twins, this world was unlike anything they had known. The smell of fresh grass and the soft murmur of water were strange and wonderful. Their small hands still clutched each other as the rancher led them toward the house, careful not to rush, letting them take in the sights at their own pace. The rancher spoke quietly as they walked. "This is your new home for now," he said. "You'll have food, water, and a safe place to sleep. You won't have to worry about being hungry." The twins glanced at each other, disbelief etched into their faces. Hunger had been their constant companion for so long that the idea of a steady meal seemed almost impossible. The girl whispered, "Really? We don't have to steal?" The rancher shook his head. "Not here. Not with me." The house was modest but sturdy. A small wooden structure with a porch facing the fields, it had a warm kitchen and a few rooms for sleeping. The rancher led the twins inside, motioning for them to wash their hands at the basin near the door. They looked at the water with wide eyes, clear, cool water flowing freely, Felt like a miracle after weeks of rationing what little they could find. The rancher smiled, noticing their astonishment. "Eat first," he said, bringing out warm bread, butter, and fresh milk. The twins hesitated only a moment before taking small bites. The food was simple, but to them, it was luxurious. They ate slowly, savoring every morsel, their hunger easing just a little with each bite. After breakfast, the rancher showed them around the property. They walked past the small barn where horses and cows were kept, past the chicken coop where hens pecked at the ground, and through fields where vegetables grew in neat rows. The boy's eyes sparkled at the sight of the animals, and the girl's curiosity grew as she watched the horses move gracefully in the morning light. The rancher explained each task simply. These animals need care. They need water, food, and attention. You will help, and in return, you will have a safe place and food to eat. At first, the twins moved hesitantly, unsure how to interact with the animals. Their hands shook as they fed the chickens, and they approached the horses cautiously. The rancher guided them patiently, never raising his voice. "Easy," he said, holding the girl's hand as she reached out to stroke a horse's neck. "They're not going to hurt you. Just be calm and gentle." Slowly, the twins began to relax, their small fears giving way to fascination. The boy laughed quietly when a chicken pecked at his hand, and the girl smiled as a horse nuzzled her shoulder. As the day wore on, the twins learned simple tasks. They collected eggs from the coop, fed the animals, and helped the rancher carry water from the stream. Each task was small but meaningful, teaching them responsibility and giving them a sense of accomplishment they had never experienced before. They began to understand that work could be rewarding, not just hard or frightening. The rancher praised their efforts gently, noticing their progress. "Good," he said after the boy successfully carried a bucket of water without spilling. "See? You're learning fast." Despite the warmth and safety, the twins sometimes looked out toward the town with apprehension. They remembered the ropes, the harsh stares, and the angry voices. They whispered to each other about whether the townspeople would forgive them, whether someone would try to take them back, or if they would ever feel safe. The rancher noticed their lingering fear and knelt beside them. "No one can take you back," he said softly. "I will make sure of it. You are safe here. You belong here now." The afternoon brought a new experience. The rancher took them to the pasture to help with the cattle. At first, the twins were nervous. The cows were much larger than they imagined, their movements slow but powerful. The boy reached out with shaky hands to help guide one cow, and the rancher stayed close, showing him how to gently move the animal without startling it. The girl watched, learning from her brother and the rancher. Soon, she was helping too, her confidence growing with each task completed. During a quiet moment in the pasture, the rancher sat on a large rock while the twins rested nearby. He spoke of his own childhood, carefully chosen words that taught lessons without scolding. "When I was young, I had to work hard too," he said. "Sometimes I went hungry, like you. But someone once gave me a chance, just like I'm giving you. That chance changed everything. I want to do the same for you." The twins listened, their eyes wide and attentive. They had never known someone who spoke so kindly, who offered guidance without anger. It made them feel both nervous and hopeful. As the sun began to set, the rancher guided the twins back to the house. Dinner was prepared, and the twins ate quietly, savoring the simple meal. Afterward, they were shown to a small room with clean blankets and a wooden bed. The girl hesitated before lying down. "Will we be safe here?" she asked. The rancher nodded. "Safe," he said. "No one can hurt you here." That night, as the twins lay under the blankets, they whispered to each other about the strange but wonderful day they had experienced. Hunger was fading, fear was softening, and for the first time in many months, they allowed themselves to imagine a future where they might belong somewhere. The next morning brought new lessons. The rancher taught the twins how to care for the garden, showing them how to water plants and pull weeds. The boy laughed as a small rabbit darted across the field, and the girl discovered the joy of seeing tiny green shoots grow after her careful watering. The rancher praised their work, reinforcing the idea that effort and care could bring positive results. The twins began to see themselves not just as children who had stolen to survive, but as helpers who could contribute and learn. Town gossip began to reach the ranch as well. Some townspeople frowned at the sight of the twins working with the rancher, muttering that children who stole were trouble. Others, curious and cautious, wondered if the rancher's choice might be wise. The twins were mostly unaware of the whispers, focusing on their tasks and the quiet guidance of the man who had given them a chance. The rancher, however, remained mindful, teaching them not just chores but lessons in patience, honesty, and trust. By the end of the week, the twins had grown more comfortable. They laughed more easily, moved with confidence, and even began to speak openly with the rancher about their hopes and fears. The boy talked about wanting to help the animals grow strong, while the girl expressed a wish to learn more about the plants and garden. Each day was filled with new lessons, and the rancher observed their progress quietly, proud of the small steps they were taking toward independence and responsibility. Evenings were often spent sitting by the fire, the twins listening as the rancher told stories of the land, of animals, and of people who had helped others in times of need. These stories were not grand or heroic, but they were full of quiet lessons about kindness, patience, and the importance of giving others a chance. The twins absorbed each story eagerly, learning not just facts about the world, but ways to live with care and empathy. One afternoon, a small challenge tested their growing confidence. A young calf had wandered too close to the fence, and the twins noticed it before it could get into danger. The boy ran to alert the rancher, while the girl helped guide the animal back to safety. The rancher praised their quick thinking and calm actions. "See, you are learning. You can protect and care for others, just like you are learning to care for yourselves." The twins beamed with pride, realizing that they could now be helpful, not just dependent. As the sun set on the ranch, the twins stood together on the small hill overlooking the fields. The sky was painted with streaks of orange and pink, and the wind carried the scent of grass and soil. For the first time, the twins felt a deep sense of peace. They had been scared, hungry, and alone for so long that this calm felt almost unreal. The rancher stood quietly nearby, watching them, knowing that the journey ahead would still have challenges, but confident that they were ready to face them together. That night, the twins fell asleep under the warm blankets, their hearts lighter than they had been in months. They dreamed not of fear but of growth, safety, and the possibility of a future filled with hope. The rancher watched over them, the quiet protector who had changed their path from one of punishment to one of learning and trust. And though the road ahead would still be long, the twins now understood that they had found someone who believed in them, someone who had given them a chance to start anew. Days turned into weeks on the ranch, and the twins began to feel the rhythm of their new life. Mornings were for chores, afternoons for tending the animals and garden, and evenings for quiet reflection by the fire. The rancher remained patient, never raising his voice, guiding them through each task with calm attention. Slowly, the twins learned that their efforts had meaning, and that small, steady work could bring results. The boy, whose name was Apache, began to take pride in his ability to care for the animals. He learned to feed the cows, refill the water troughs, and gently guide the horses through the pasture. His sister, Winona, discovered the joy of the garden. She marveled at the small shoots that grew after her careful watering and the way the sun seemed to make everything shine. Together they laughed when a goat ran between their legs, or a chicken startled them by clucking loudly. These small moments brought joy that had been absent from their lives for so long. Despite the happiness, the twins sometimes remembered the town and the harsh treatment they had received. The ropes, the angry shouts, the whispers of judgment, they lingered in their memories. Akecheta would sometimes sit quietly by the barn, staring at the distant town, and worrying about what others thought of them. "Do you think they will forgive us?" he asked Winona one afternoon as they carried water. Winona shook her head slowly. "I don't know, but we can't worry about that now. We have to focus on here, on what we can do." She squeezed his hand, reminding him that they were no longer alone. The rancher had taught them to face life one step at a time, and slowly they were learning to trust themselves and each other. One morning, the rancher called them to help with a new task. A fence along the edge of the pasture had broken, leaving the cattle at risk of wandering. The twins were nervous. They had never handled tools before, and the fence seemed so large and heavy. The rancher knelt beside them, showing how to lift each wooden post and secure it carefully. "Take your time," he said. "Work together and you'll get it done." The twins worked cautiously, Apache lifting while Winona held the post steady. They learned to communicate with each other, to anticipate each other's movements, and to cooperate without speaking too much. By midday, the fence was repaired, and the twins stood back, proud of what they had accomplished. The rancher smiled, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. "Good work. You see, together, you can do things you didn't think possible." That afternoon, the twins explored more of the ranch, curious about the land and the animals. They discovered a small creek where fish darted beneath the water and dragonflies hovered over the surface. Winona knelt by the water, fascinated by the tiny creatures and the smooth stones. Etched watched, feeling a sense of calm that he had never known before. The rancher joined them, sitting quietly on the bank and letting the twins explore at their own pace. The rancher began to teach them about responsibility beyond chores. He spoke of honesty, of taking care of oneself and others, and of making choices that reflected kindness. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, he told the story of a young boy who had made a mistake but learned to make amends through hard work and courage. The twins listened intently, understanding that mistakes did not define a person. It was how they responded to them that mattered. Their growing confidence was tested one day when a young calf wandered away from the herd. The twins noticed it first, and a panic rose in them. Etched ran to alert the rancher, while Winona carefully guided the calf back toward safety. The rancher praised their quick thinking and calm action. "See, you are learning. You can protect and care for others, just like you are learning to care for yourselves." The twins beamed with pride, realizing that their efforts had real value. Not all moments were easy. Sometimes, the twins felt homesick, missing their parents and the life they had known. At night, they would whisper to each other about their fears, and the rancher would listen from the doorway, never interrupting but letting them speak. His quiet presence was comforting, a reminder that they were no longer alone in the world. One afternoon, a visitor arrived at the ranch. A merchant passing through the town had heard about the twins and their new life and decided to see for himself. He watched silently as the twins worked with the rancher, carrying water and feeding the animals. The twins were nervous at first, unsure how the visitor would judge them. But the rancher encouraged them quietly, reminding them to do their best and focus on their work. By the end of the visit, the merchant smiled, impressed with their progress. "You've done well," he said to the twins. "Keep it up and you'll go far." The town, however, remained a source of tension. Rumors began to circulate about the rancher's choice to take in the twins. Some townspeople whispered that children who stole were troublemakers and should be punished. Others, observing the twins' growth and the rancher's guidance, began to reconsider. The twins, unaware of much of this gossip, continued their routines, learning and growing each day. One day, the rancher asked the twins to help him prepare for the coming winter. He showed them how to store food, gather firewood, and care for the animals during the cold months. The twins worked diligently, understanding the importance of preparation and responsibility. As they stacked firewood and sorted vegetables, they felt a sense of accomplishment that was entirely new to them. The twins also began to learn the value of trust. The rancher entrusted them with small tasks on their own, such as checking the chickens or collecting eggs. At first, they were nervous, fearing they might fail or make a mistake. But with each successful task, their confidence grew. They began to trust themselves, and in turn, they trusted the rancher's guidance. One evening, after a long day of work, the twins sat by the fire with the rancher. They shared their thoughts about their lives, the past mistakes, and the hope they now felt. Etched spoke first, his voice quiet but earnest. "I never thought anyone would care about us," he said. Winona nodded, adding, "We didn't think we could belong anywhere. But here, we feel safe." The rancher smiled, proud of their openness and honesty. "Belonging comes from trust and care," he said. "And you've earned that through your actions and your hearts." The following weeks brought more lessons and challenges. The twins learned to identify plants in the garden, care for the animals, and even mend fences and simple tools. They discovered that hard work could be rewarding, not just tiring, and that their efforts made a difference. The rancher continued to guide them with patience and encouragement, never scolding but always teaching through example. One day a storm rolled in, dark clouds covering the sky and winds whipping through the fields. The twins watched nervously as the animals huddled together, the trees swaying dangerously. The rancher calmly instructed them to secure the animals and bring in extra food and water. Working together, the twins followed his directions, their fear replaced by focus and determination. By evening, the storm had passed, and the rancher praised their quick thinking. "You did well," he said. "Even in fear, you acted wisely." The twins felt a pride that warmed them more than the fire ever could. As the weeks passed, the twins continued to grow, both in skill and in character. They began to smile more easily, laugh more freely, and take pride in their accomplishments. The rancher observed their progress quietly, knowing that each day brought them closer to independence and a better understanding of responsibility, trust, and care. By the end of the third part of their journey, the twins were no longer simply children who had stolen out of hunger. They were helpers, learners, and members of a small but growing family. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and the challenge of new responsibilities, and they had succeeded. The rancher had given them a chance, and they had taken it with courage and determination. The twins lay in their small room that night, exhausted but content. They whispered to each other about the day's lessons and the things they had learned. For the first time, they felt a real sense of accomplishment, understanding that their actions mattered and that their lives could change for the better. They drifted to sleep with a sense of hope and anticipation, knowing that the days ahead would bring more lessons, more challenges, and more opportunities to grow. Outside, the rancher stood quietly, watching over them. He knew that life would continue to test them, but he also knew that they were ready to face those challenges. Through patience, guidance, and care, he had begun to shape their journey from one of fear and desperation to one of hope and responsibility. And as the stars appeared in the clear night sky, the rancher felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the twins' lives had already begun to change in meaningful ways. Life on the ranch had become a rhythm the twins were beginning to understand. But with the approaching change of season, new challenges arrived that would test not only their skills, but their courage and character. The crisp mornings hinted at the coming winter, and the rancher knew it was time to teach the twins lessons that went beyond chores and garden work. These were lessons about responsibility, honesty, and facing fear head-on. One morning, as the twins were feeding the chickens and gathering eggs, the rancher approached them with a serious look. "Today," he said, "I need you both to handle something important on your own." Apache and Winona looked at each other nervously. "What is it?" asked Winona. The rancher smiled faintly. "The west pasture. The cows need water, and you two will take the buckets from the creek and make sure everyone is safe. I will watch from a distance, but I will not guide you step by step. You must figure it out together." The twins felt a mix of excitement and fear. They had learned much, but the thought of working completely alone was daunting. Still, they trusted the rancher, and they knew he believed in their abilities. Together, they took the buckets and set off toward the creek, their small feet crunching on the dirt path. As they walked, they whispered about how they would manage, reminding each other of what the rancher had taught them: patience, calmness, and cooperation. At the creek, the twins worked carefully, filling the buckets with cool, clear water. But when they began walking back toward the pasture, the boy tripped over a small rock, spilling water onto the ground. Panic flared in his chest as he looked at the remaining bucket. "I ruined it. We'll never get enough water for all the cows," he whispered. Winona knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay," she said softly. "We'll take it slow. We can do this." Together they continued, moving carefully over uneven ground and dodging rocks and small tree branches. The twins were learning that mistakes could happen, but they did not define their abilities. When they finally reached the pasture, the cows were restless, sensing their approach. Apache took a deep breath and gently called to them. while Winona guided the buckets to the trough. Slowly, carefully, they poured the water and ensured that every cow had enough. Their hearts swelled with pride. They had completed the task successfully on their own. Later that afternoon, a new challenge arrived in the form of a lost calf. The young animal had wandered off near the forest line, and its soft, frightened bleating carried across the field. Akacheta and Winona noticed it immediately, and fear surged through them. The calf was far from safety, and the thought of losing it frightened them. "We have to help," said Winona. "We can't let it get lost." They approached cautiously, remembering the rancher's lessons about patience and gentle guidance. The calf shied away at first, but the twins moved slowly, speaking softly, and eventually managed to get it to follow them back toward the herd. By the time they returned the calf safely, they were exhausted, but their triumph was undeniable. The rancher, who had watched from a distance, nodded in approval. "You handled that very well," he said. "You were calm, careful, and thoughtful. That is what responsibility looks like." That evening, as the twins sat by the fire, they reflected on their day. Akacheta spoke first. "I was scared at first." "I thought we might fail," he admitted. Winona nodded.
"Me too. But we didn't give up."
"We worked together." The rancher smiled, pleased with their honesty. "Fear is normal," he said. "It is how you respond to it that matters. You both showed courage today." The next day brought another lesson in trust and honesty. While gathering firewood, the twins found a small basket near the edge of the forest. It contained a few tools and some bread that had been left behind by a traveler. Akacheta's first instinct was to take the bread for themselves. They were still children with memories of hunger. But Winona hesitated. "We should tell the rancher," she said firmly.
Akacheta's eyes widened. "But we could eat it now," he whispered.
Winona shook her head. "We promised we would be honest. We can't just take it." When they returned to the ranch, the twins told the rancher about the basket. He listened quietly, nodding. "You did the right thing by coming to me," he said. "Temptation is always around, but honesty will always guide you better than fear or hunger. Today, you made a choice that shows your growth." The twins felt proud, understanding that their actions now had meaning beyond survival. They were learning to make decisions guided by their hearts and values. As autumn deepened, the town's whispers grew louder. Some townspeople were skeptical of the rancher's choice to take in the twins, still seeing them as children who had stolen. Others, observing the twins' progress and the care given by the rancher, began to soften. One afternoon, a townsperson approached the ranch to see the twins work for himself. He watched silently as they carried water, fed the animals, and carefully tended the garden. By the end of the visit, he was impressed. "They've learned much," he said to the rancher. "You've done well." The rancher nodded, not seeking praise but quietly acknowledging the twins' growth. However, not every day was peaceful. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept across the fields, dark clouds rolling in and winds whipping the trees. The twins watched nervously as lightning flashed in the distance. The animals became restless, sensing danger. The rancher's voice was calm but firm. "We must act quickly. Help me secure the animals and bring in extra food and water."
The twins sprang into action, carrying buckets, gathering feed, and guiding the animals to safety.
Their hearts raced, but they remembered the rancher's lessons, and through careful work, everything was secured before the worst of the storm hit. After the storm passed, the twins were drenched but proud. The rancher smiled at them. "You acted with courage today. You stayed calm when fear could have taken over. That is a lesson you will carry with you forever." The twins beamed, realizing that bravery was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it.
One afternoon, the rancher noticed the twins whispering together near the barn.
Curious, he approached. "What are you discussing?" he asked. Winona looked up shyly. "We were talking about the town," she said. "We wonder if they will ever see us differently, if they will trust us." The rancher nodded thoughtfully. "Time will show," he said. "But remember, your actions speak louder than anyone's opinion. Keep showing honesty, kindness, and courage, and others will follow your example." The twins continued to take on more responsibilities. They learned to mend fences, care for injured animals, and even assist in preparing meals from the garden. Each task, no matter how small, taught them patience, diligence, and the value of their work. The rancher guided them without judgment, always emphasizing that learning and growing was more important than perfection. One evening, as they sat by the fire, the twins reflected on how far they had come. "I never thought we could do all these things," Apache admitted. "I thought we would always be scared and hungry," Winona smiled. "We still have much to learn, but we are not alone anymore. We have someone who believes in us." The rancher watched quietly, heart swelling with pride. He knew the twins were changing not just in skill, but in spirit. They were learning to trust, to care, and to face challenges with courage. The following days brought another test of character. While tending the garden, the twins discovered a small fire had started near the edge of the property. Panic set in for a moment, but they quickly remembered the lessons of calmness and cooperation. Working together, they fetched water from the creek and used it to control the flames until the fire was out. The rancher arrived just as the last sparks died.
"You handled that perfectly," he said. "You stayed calm and worked together."
That is bravery, responsibility, and wisdom all in one. The twins felt a new sense of pride, realizing that they were capable of more than they had imagined. As the days grew colder and the ranch prepared for winter, the twins understood the importance of preparation, foresight, and responsibility. They no longer saw themselves as helpless children but as young people capable of learning, helping, and growing. The rancher continued to guide them, always patient, always kind, and always teaching through example rather than words alone. By the end of this part of their journey, the twins were stronger, wiser, and more confident. They had faced fear, temptation, and challenges that tested their skills and hearts. They had learned honesty, courage, and responsibility. Most importantly, they had learned to trust themselves, each other, and the rancher who had changed the course of their lives. Winter had arrived, painting the ranch in soft shades of white and gray. Snow covered the fields, and the streams had begun to freeze at the edges. The chill in the air was sharp, but the rancher had prepared the twins well. Firewood was stacked, animals had warm shelter, and food was stored safely. The twins, Akeketa and Winona, had grown stronger and more confident over the months, learning not just chores but lessons that would guide them for life. That morning the twins woke early, as they had every day, and bundled themselves in warm clothes. They helped the rancher feed the animals, carefully measuring portions and checking that each had water. The animals were calmer in the cold, but they still needed attention, and the twins moved with quiet focus, proud of how much they had learned. The rancher watched them with a small, satisfied smile. These children, once hungry, scared, and tied to a post in town, were now capable, responsible, and brave. After breakfast, the rancher called them to the porch. "Today," he said, "we will check the town for supplies. We need a few things to keep everyone safe through winter. This will also be a chance to show you how to navigate the town with confidence and care."
The twins exchanged nervous glances.
The town still held memories of fear, punishment, and judgment, yet the rancher's calm voice reassured them. "We will go together," he said. "You are ready." As they walked toward town, snow crunching beneath their boots, the twins noticed how the landscape had changed. The streets were quieter now, and the crisp air carried the smell of wood smoke from chimneys. When they entered the town square, familiar sights returned. The bakery, the post office, and the small shops where townspeople gathered. A few residents noticed them and murmured, some curious, some skeptical. The twins walked confidently, holding their heads high. The fear that had once weighed so heavily on them seemed smaller now. Their first stop was the general store. The rancher asked for supplies, flour, sugar, and blankets, and the twins helped carry the items outside. They moved carefully, ensuring nothing was dropped. A young boy in the store watched them curiously. He had seen them tied in the town square months before and whispered to his mother, "Those are the twins who stole bread." Winona noticed him, but did not respond with fear. Instead, she smiled politely, and Akecheta nodded. The simple act of kindness and calmness changed something in the boy, and he looked away, thoughtful. After collecting supplies, they visited the bakery. The baker remembered the incident from months ago and stared as the twins entered. The twins paused, uncertain. Then etched spoke softly. "We are here to thank you. We remember the bread, and we are grateful." The baker's expression softened, realizing that these children had grown and learned. "You've changed," he said quietly. "I see it now." The twins nodded, and with the rancher's guidance, they purchased small treats for the animals as well. Returning to the ranch, the twins reflected on the trip. They had faced the town once more, and while some memories were still painful, they realized that their actions now had meaning. They could interact with others honestly and respectfully, and their past mistakes no longer defined them. The rancher praised them quietly. "You have shown courage and responsibility. You can move through the world with honesty and care. That is more important than anyone's opinion." Winter days continued, each bringing new lessons. The twins helped tend the animals, care for the garden, and prepare firewood. They learned to repair fences, mend tools, and assist with cooking and cleaning. Each day was filled with challenges, but the twins faced them with increasing confidence and joy. The rancher guided them without scolding, teaching them that mistakes were opportunities to learn, not reasons for punishment. One evening, a small conflict arose that tested the twins' growth. A young calf became trapped under a fallen branch in the pasture, and panic set in. The twins rushed to the scene, unsure what to do. The rancher arrived quickly but let them take the lead, giving guidance only when necessary. Apache lifted one side of the branch while Winona encouraged the calf to move. Working together calmly, they freed the animal, both of them panting but smiling with relief. The rancher nodded. "You handled that perfectly," he said. "You remained calm and thoughtful, even under pressure. That is courage and wisdom."
The townspeople began to notice the twins' progress.
Word spread that the children who had once stolen were now working diligently on the ranch, helping the rancher care for animals and land. Some still whispered skeptically, but more began to acknowledge the change. One afternoon, a woman who had been among the onlookers when the twins were tied in the square approached the ranch. She watched quietly as they helped with chores and smiled softly. "You have done well," she said. "It is good to see children learning and growing." The twins blushed but felt proud, understanding that their actions were now speaking louder than past mistakes. As winter deepened, the twins grew closer to the rancher. They shared stories of their past, their fears, and their hopes for the future. The rancher listened patiently, offering guidance and encouragement. "You have learned much," he said one evening, "but the greatest lesson is this. You have learned to trust yourself, to act with honesty, and to face life with courage. That is the foundation for everything else." The twins nodded, realizing that his words were true. They were no longer defined by fear, hunger, or punishment. They were capable, responsible, and ready for the future. One day, a new challenge arrived. A neighboring ranch reported that one of their animals had wandered onto their land, and it was causing concern. The twins were asked to help guide the animal back safely. At first, they hesitated, remembering the fear they had once felt when facing animals alone. But they took a deep breath, held each other's hands briefly, and followed the rancher's instructions. Slowly and carefully, they guided the animal back, avoiding danger and keeping calm. The neighboring rancher was impressed. "They have grown," he said. "They know responsibility and care." That night, as the twins lay under their warm blankets, they whispered to each other about how far they had come.
"I can't believe we used to be tied in the square," Apache said quietly. Winona nodded.
"It feels like another life. We have learned so much, and we are safe." They fell asleep with a sense of peace, knowing that they had been given a second chance and had embraced it fully. As the weeks passed, the ranch became a small but thriving world for the twins. They continued to help, learn, and grow, gaining not only skills but a sense of self-worth. The rancher remained a quiet guide, teaching through example, patience, and gentle encouragement. The twins understood that their journey had been difficult, but it had made them stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The winter eventually gave way to the first hints of spring. Snow melted into soft streams, and new life began to emerge on the ranch. The twins walked through the fields, watching small buds appear on the trees and new grass grow in the pastures. They understood that, like the land, they too had begun to grow and thrive after a harsh winter of hardship and fear. One morning the rancher gathered the twins. "Today we will take a walk through the town," he said. "It is time for you to meet others who will see your growth and the change you have made." The twins felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, but the rancher's calm presence reassured them. They walked together through the town square, heads held high, smiles on their faces. Townspeople paused, recognizing the twins and remembering the past. But this time, the children stood tall, confident, and honest. The baker, seeing them again, smiled warmly. "You've grown into fine young people," he said. "It is good to see children who have learned to care and work hard." Others nodded, acknowledging the twins' transformation. No one spoke of punishment or fear. Instead, they saw proof that guidance, care, and second chances could change lives. At the ranch, the twins continued to thrive. They worked with the animals, tended the garden, and helped the rancher with tasks around the property. They laughed freely, played together, and shared stories of their past and hopes for the future. The rancher watched quietly, proud that his patience and care had helped these children move from fear and desperation to confidence and hope. One evening, as the sun set over the hills, Apache and Winona stood together, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange.
"We have learned so much," Winona said softly.
"And we are not afraid anymore." Apache nodded. "We can face anything now because we have each other and the rancher who believes in us." They smiled, understanding that their journey, though difficult, had led them to a place of safety, love, and hope. The rancher joined them, standing quietly for a moment. "You have come far," he said. "Your past does not define you. Your choices, your courage, and your care for others define who you are. Remember that always." The twins nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride and gratitude. As night fell, the twins settled into their warm room, looking forward to the days ahead. The town no longer seemed threatening, the past no longer seemed defining. They had learned responsibility, courage, honesty, and compassion. They had faced fear, challenges, and temptation, and had grown stronger with each experience. The rancher's quiet guidance had changed their lives forever.